Gender discrimination, big payouts, and ignoring complaints at Snapchat. This is a good one today, guys. Let's talk about it. Navigating the corporate workplace is anything but easy. You've got office politics, favoritism, and even serious issues like racism and sexism that make the workplace more challenging than it should be. HR professionals often find themselves managing conflicts, personalities, and agendas. It can feel like walking through a minefield. But when women step into roles traditionally dominated by men, those challenges can multiply. And that's exactly what happened at Snapchat when a group of women decided to take a stand against workplace discrimination. Hi, I'm Harlow Reed, and in today's video, we're diving into their story, what they experienced, and why it matters, and most importantly, what lessons we can take from their case. The content shared on this channel is for informational purposes only and is not a substitute for professional legal advice. Always consult a qualified attorney or HR professional for specific guidance tailored to your needs. And if you find any value in this video, please remember to like and subscribe. Thank you so much. This case traces back to 2014, a time when remote work wasn't mainstream yet, and most companies still required employees to be in the office every day. Around that time, there was a noticeable rise in workplace discrimination cases. Gender discrimination and harassment complaints were making headlines all over the place, especially in tech and finance industries. During this time, Snapchat, an up-and-coming company, stood out because it revolutionized how people communicated online. It was one of the first platforms to introduce ephemeral content, that is, photos, videos, and messages that disappear after being viewed. Snap Inc., the parent company of Snapchat, grew rapidly in its early years and went public in 2017, raising $3.4 billion in its IPO, further demonstrating that it had become one of the most popular social media apps, especially among young users. And with rapid growth comes rapid pains, growing pains, that is. And in the tech world, we've seen time and time again that innovation can sometimes come at a cost. In Snapchat's case, while the company was focused on expanding its user base and rolling out new features, it wasn't paying enough attention to its internal culture. And while Snap was progressing between 2014 and 2017 from a small startup to a major player in the tech world, female employees were raising concerns about pay disparities, lack of promotions, and even harassment. The company's policies simply failed to keep up with its explosive growth, and this created an environment where some employees felt marginalized and retaliated against for speaking up. And as one would imagine, internal issues related to gender equality were largely overlooked. It was in this environment that several women began reporting concerns to human resources about harassment, sexism, unfair hiring practices, pay disparities, and a lack of promotion opportunities. Despite raising these concerns, these issues were not addressed, and many of the women ended up leaving the company, some due to retaliation, while others left after securing new positions in other companies. But for many who left, the story didn't end there. Many of those same women who were familiar with their rights took their concerns to the California Civil Rights Department and shared their experiences at Snapchat. These complaints spanned from 2014 to 2019, and they ultimately led to action. In October of 2019, the California Civil Rights Department, led by Deputy Director Jamie Gillette, filed a formal complaint against Snap, claiming that from 2014 to 2017, the company had failed to ensure fair treatment of its female employees. This wasn't just an isolated issue. It pointed to a larger systematic problem within the company. So in this case, it wasn't just a woman who filed a complaint against her employer, hired an attorney, and then submitted a complaint to the EOC, and then ultimately through the court system for civil liability. There were so many complaints filed with the California Civil Rights Department that the government was actually compelled to notice and take action. This kind of response isn't unique to one agency either. We've seen similar actions from federal employment agencies like the Department of Labor, ERISA, and the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. If you're interested in how this applies to the workplace, especially when employees repeatedly report issues about a manager but don't see any changes, I encourage you to watch my video, The Hidden Power of HR Complaints. It dives into how complaints can drive meaningful change even if the results aren't immediate. Now let's get back to our discussion about Snapchat and take a look at the specific allegations made against the organization. One of the complaints made was about gender pay disparity, stating that female employees were consistently paid less than their male counterparts while performing the same or similar work. And despite being equally qualified, women were earning lower wages for the same roles, which is a direct violation of equal pay laws. Another complaint involved the lack of promotional opportunities for women. Women were stuck in the same position with little or no chance of advancement, while they witnessed their male counterparts being promoted more often. And this happened even when the women were equally or even more qualified. And another complaint alleged that there was a hostile work environment. They detailed a workplace culture that allowed rampant harassment to go unchecked. And Snapchat didn't have sufficient policies in place to prevent gender based harassment or to address complaints when they were made. And then the final complaint involved retaliation against those employees who spoke up. And that's perhaps the most troubling of all of the complaints that were made, was that women who raised concerns about pay and promotions or reported harassment were met with retaliation, including negative performance reviews, being passed over for promotions, and sometimes even losing their opportunity within the company. So from 2020 to 2023, CRD investigated Snap, and negotiations between Snap and CRD continued during this time. Then in June of 2024, Snapchat and CRD reached a settlement for a whopping $15 million. It was big headlines. But agreeing to that $15 million settlement wasn't the end of it. It was just the beginning. This case was not about paying out money. It required Snap to take meaningful steps to improve its workplace, its culture, its policies. So, what did the company agree to do as a part of this settlement? As a part of the settlement, Snap agreed to hire an independent consultant to review their pay practices and identify any disparities between men and women employees. The goal was to make sure that women aren't earning less than their male counterparts for the same work. They also agreed to an external audit where a third party would come in to make sure that they were complying with anti-discrimination and harassment laws. These audits were a way to hold them accountable and to prevent future issues of discrimination. And then finally, they also agreed to update their internal policies to make sure that harassment and retaliation are addressed swiftly as required by the law, and they had to provide more training for employees on workplace discrimination and harassment. And then finally, one of the major concerns that were raised in this case was the lack of promotion opportunities for women. So, as a part of the settlement, Snap agreed to track promotions to ensure that qualified female employees have equal opportunities for advancement. So we can see from this case that companies simply cannot afford to ignore what's going on in the workplace. The culture and what's happening to employees is important. And when they ignore it, it can bankrupt them. It certainly can cripple them depending on the size of the organization. Let's look closer at some of the things that you can expect from your HR department. One of the first things is to pay attention to pay gaps that might be happening in the workplace. That's not just a legal requirement. It's actually a sign of a fair and equitable workplace. So making sure that your HR department is regularly auditing their pay practices to ensure that everyone is compensated fairly. When men are brought in, are they brought in at the high end of the range, but women are brought in at the midpoint of the range? Or, it's about the patterns that you can see in the hiring practices. So those are things that you should certainly expect and be able to see and ask about from your HR department, not in terms of individual people, but where the trends are. And then HR should also make sure that they have anti-discrimination policies in place, but work to create an environment where employees feel safe and they can report issues without fear of retaliation. Of course, training is always something that's so important in preventing harassment and issues with pay equity. You want to make sure that people understand what it looks like and they have language that they can use to explain what's happening to them. It's not a one and done process. These things that should happen routinely, they should be ongoing within an organization. If you or someone you know is experiencing discrimination, harassment, or retaliation, know that you are protected by the law. You have the right to report these issues without fear of losing your job. I would encourage you to document everything. If you believe you're facing unequal treatment, keep a record of what's happening, your emails, your performance reviews, anything that can support your case if you need to go to court. Speak up, but safely. Retaliation is real, and it's one of the biggest fears that employees have when considering if they need to report an issue. If you need to report an issue, speak up, but do it through the appropriate channels. Protect yourself, and if necessary, seek legal advice. Thanks for watching today's episode of the HR Insider. If you found this video helpful, please be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you don't miss future updates. And remember, workplace fairness starts with accountability. I'll see you in the next video.